Pandemic panic. I get it. So let's all move to the country. Hey, country life is great. But country life isn't like in the movies. Or is it? Live happy, fun-loving, and carefree. So today there's a lot of pandemic panic, and people are moving out to the country, which could be great or maybe not so great. Is it the right thing for you to be thinking about doing? So let's just cover a few things. Pandemic panic. Why in the heck are we even having this? It just, my brain explodes when I try to wrap my head around of the panic that we're all having with this pandemic. And if we think about it, way back at the very beginning, we were going to have a, shutdown for 2 weeks. The 2-week shutdown to flatten the curve. That was the big thing, because we didn't want to be overwhelming hospitals with sick people. So everybody said, okay, that sounds like a good thing. And then here we are, forever later, months and months, years, and we're still hearing the same story. And what is the problem? The thing is what I think about as an expert, when somebody is an expert at something, whatever that something is, they could be a financial planner or an electrician or a lawyer or a plumber or a real estate agent. That's, and you go and get advice, you get an information from an expert. Their job is to take all that knowledge, all that information, all that expertise that they have and present it to you in a manner that suits your situation and suits your ability to understand what they're talking about, so that you can make a choice. You can make a decision. It's about you making the choices that are right for your life. And today we've sort of lost our control, and I think that's why there's such a panic today. And just to, give you a quick little silly example, it'd be like, suppose that you were teaching where babies come from to a high school junior, somebody that's 16, 17 years old. You're going to present that knowledge, that information in such a way that they can understand it, and they can use that information so they can make choices about what they want to do with their life. It's their choice. If you're presenting the same information, where babies come from, to a kindergartner, to a 5-year-old, you're going to present the information completely different, I hope, and so they can understand it at their level. And, in the real world, for adults, something like a real estate agent. If you're buying your first home, they're going to present the information to you in such a way that you can understand what you need to understand, so that you can make the decision, you make the choice about what kind of home you're going to buy, where you're going to buy it, whatever. If you're somebody that's bought 2, 3, 4, 5 homes, and it's like, oh, I'm buying another home, that real estate agent is going to provide information to you at a completely different level. And that's what it is. And the problem that we have today, the biggest situation that I can't understand why it's happening, is today we're taking our advice from politicians. And I don't understand why we're listening to politicians for advice. And because of the pandemic panic, we're listening to politicians for medical advice, which is the absolute craziest, stupidest thing on the planet. And I don't know how that happened. We should be listening to medical experts. And because politicians, it's just like the wind changing. They just go back and forth on what's important, because whatever they think people want to hear, whatever they need to say, so they get voted again and they keep their power. They just want to keep people scared to death about this thing. And it's serious. I mean, we all know it's a serious situation, but we've got to live life, and the experts should be giving us information so that we can make that choice. And the problem there again is that they're inconsistent. I always call it the hypocrisy. And I don't want to dwell too much on it, but just one more quick thing here before we get the moving to the country part is, like, for example, the CDC, when this all started back at the beginning, they basically said, and it's right in their guidelines, that if a physician even thought that the person passed because of COVID, because we just don't have the tests necessary, we're all too busy. If a physician thinks that the person passed away because of COVID, that's what they put on the death certificate. And the insanity of all of that is, and you can look this up, I researched it before I started talking here, is in, I believe it was Florida, but it was in the summer of 2020, June or July. A person was riding their motorcycle down the road. They got hit by a vehicle and killed. The cause of death on the motorcycle rider's death certificate was COVID. I mean, I'm serious. Now, it may hopefully have gotten changed, but the physician said, well, he could have died of COVID. We don't know. And it's like, I mean, that's just the craziness of it. And now today, with the number of people that are vaccinated, 40% some states, 70% in others, we're kind of in the halfway point there, is the people that are vaccinated are now becoming infected with the virus. And they're calling it breakthrough cases. But now the CDC is saying we're only going to count it as a breakthrough case if the person actually goes to the hospital. Well, most people that are having breakthrough cases, people that are vaccinated that are getting it, just have a really mild case of it. So they're never going to be in the hospital. So here we are, two different sets of rules, and that's why politicians should not be in charge of giving us medical advice, or giving us any advice for that matter. So the problem that I see with all of this is people are being forced to move. Like people after Katrina from New Orleans were forced to go to Houston. And, it happens in other situations. And if you were in a state that had big shutdowns and non-essential workers and you don't have a job and you can't earn money to pay your bill and it's really expensive to live there, cost of living, is you may feel that you've been forced to move to another state, to a completely different part of the country. And, if you were living in California and you're forced to move to Florida, or you're living, in Washington and you're forced to move to Missouri or whatever it is, you may have liked where you were, and that's fine. That's good. Hopefully we all like where we live. And you're just not going to be comfortable to be happy in that spot. I grew up in the Midwest, and when I lived in New England, the 1 hour time change just never felt right. And then when I moved back to the Midwest, it's kind of like, well, that feels better. After 20 plus years, I never adapted to that. The foods that are available, just the way people are in that. If you didn't want to move somewhere, you're probably not going to be happy living there. So that's something for you to think about when you're looking at what you want to do. If you're just fed up with the pandemic panic and you're just, I'm tired of these lockdowns, I'm tired of the shutdowns, I'm tired of the quarantines, wear masks, don't wear masks, get the vaccine. Don't get the vaccine. Even if you get the vaccine, you're going to have to wear masks now anyway indoors. And you're like, I just want to get out of here and live someplace where I don't ever see anybody and I can just do what I want to do and get rid of that panic and feel safe. So one thing you got to think about as I'm sitting here rubbing my arms in that is there's a lot of bugs out in the country, and where we live, the little bitty tiny ants, people call them sugar ants, it's like you're on a picnic. Even in your house, everybody complains about ants. I don't care what kind of house you have. If you leave a little spot of something on your counter, there's going to be a million ants there in the morning when you get up. And ticks, we've got ticks like crazy. So we have chickens and guineas. and we keep the yard sort of mowed and all that to try to cut down on that. But if you move out to the country, and I don't care, every part of the country, wherever you live, has their particular kind of bug that you're going to have to deal with. Mosquitoes, black flies, ticks, whatever it is. And one thing that and this, I mean this in seriousness, I'm always being happy, fun, loving, and carefree, kind of silly about it. But I'm making no judgment about this. I'm just trying to state it as unprejudiced and unbiased and just as factual as I can. But in the cities, if you live in a really urban, populated area, you and the people around you tend to be liberally minded. And again, that's just fact. That's no judgment on anybody's part. You have transportation, you turn the faucet, you expect the water to come out, and you don't worry about where it comes from and your electricity, and you just walk to the grocery store or whatever. You have a particular liberal mindset if you're from an urban area. Out in the country, people tend to be more conservative because we have to rely on ourselves. We're responsible for our own water, our own electricity, trimming branches. You may be without power for a while until the crews decide to come down your country road and fix things. It's just, that's the way it is. And you're not going to call an Uber to take you home in the country. If you need a pizza at 9 o'clock at night, you're out of luck unless you know how to cook one yourself. So those are the kinds of things to think about. And the critical thing is, if you're thinking of moving to the country to get out of the pandemic panic, make sure it's really what you want to do. And the mistake that ends up happening is people move because they feel like they've been forced to move, and then they buy a home and it seems cheaper in the country because of where they lived in the city. Everything is super expensive, and they purchase a home, and then down the road they say, I really want to get back to the city, and they're stuck because they can't sell their home. They're upside down financially. They've spent their money. The job out in the country doesn't pay half what it paid in the city, even though they didn't have a job when they left. And then you get locked in, and then you're really going to be miserable and upset at living in the country because now you're stuck there and you can't get back to where you really prefer, where you like to live. And again, that's fine. So watch another video, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Don't stress over the pandemic panic because it's all about living happy, fun-loving, and carefree if you do decide to move out to the country.